Good morning. This is going to be a recording of Gatsby Chapter 3 that starts on page 39. So, picking up where we left off from Chapter 2, you know that Tom and Myrtle are having the affair in the apartment. And Nick goes to this party in the apartment. Yeah, a little incognito with the hair this morning, okay? So Nick goes to this party. He says he's been drunk only 2 times in his life, and one was when they went to that party. Okay, so now you're going to see in chapter 3 him talking about Gatsby's party. Okay, so a couple things to think about here. Okay, your annotation focus obviously should continue to be characterization. You want to focus about Nick and his observations, and then this party and this chapter are going to highlight the color motif and also the name motif. So remember how when you did stations or the close reading questions, I had you looking up the meaning of names. That's going to come into play right here. And you want to really take a huge note of the differences between old money and new money. Okay, so this party occurs again on West Egg, which is new money. So pay attention to what Nick observes about that. The other thing you want to think about is that at the end of chapter 2, we saw what alcohol does to people, okay? In this case, for chapter 3, you're also going to see a lot of other alcohol, and I want you to think about how that relates to the theme of carelessness, that money makes people do stupid, careless things, particularly as it refers to cars, okay? So color motif, name motif, and carelessness, particularly with money. Sorry, my cat just jumped on the table. Milo, get down. All right, anyways, page 39, and pardon me with the straight hair here. Okay. There was music from my neighbor's house through the summer nights. In his blue gardens, see, right there, there's a color motif. Why in the world is he calling them blue? In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. And there's another thing where he's using and with lists to make it sound like there's a whole lot of things going on here. At high tide in the afternoon, I watched his guests diving from the tower of his raft. Think of like if you're in Lake Michigan and there's like a raft, or you're in a lake and he calls it a raft, but it's like a big square of something that balances but is anchored down. I can't think of the name for it because it's early in the morning and the coffee has not yet sunk in all the way. But it's like you swim out there, okay? But that's what he's talking about. I watched his guests diving from the tower of his raft or taking the sun on the hot sand of his beach, while his 2 motorboats slit the waters of the Sound, drawing aquaplanes over cataracts of foam. On weekends, his Rolls Royce became an omnibus, which is like a party bus, right? Omni, remember, means everywhere, bearing parties to and from the city between 9 in the morning and long past midnight, while his station wagon scampered like a brisk yellow bug to meet all trains. So people are coming and going with basically using his cars. And on Mondays, 8 servants, including an extra gardener, toiled all day with mops and scrubbing brushes and hammers and garden shears, repairing the ravages of the night before. Ravage is one of your vocab words. Remember, ravage is like something that's completely destroyed. Every Friday, 5 crates of oranges and lemons arrived from a fruiterer in New York. Every Monday, these same oranges and lemons left his back door in a pyramid of pulpless halves. There was a machine in the kitchen which could extract the juice of 200 oranges in half an hour, if a little button was pressed 200 times by a butler's thumb. At least once a fortnight, And you need to pay attention to this particular paragraph and the next on page 40, because I know for a fact this one is on the test. So he says, at least once a fortnight, and look up how many days are in a fortnight, a crop of caterers came down with several 100 feet of canvas and enough colored lights, there's your colors again, to make a Christmas tree of Gatsby's enormous garden. So he's using a metaphor there, comparing what Gatsby's garden and backyard looks like to a Christmas tree. On buffet tables, garnished with glistening hors d'oeuvre, spiced baked hams crowded against salads of harlequin designs, and pastry pigs and turkeys bewitched to a dark gold. In the main hall, a bar with a real brass rail was set up and stocked with gins and liquors and with cordials so long forgotten that most of his female guests were too young to know one from another. By 7 o'clock, the orchestra has arrived. No thin five-piece affair, but a whole pitful of oboes and trombones and saxophones and viols. Viols would be like types of violins or violas, right? So I'm going to start that sentence again because I want you to pay attention to how he's using lists to show the extreme opulence and extravagance of this party. By 7 o'clock, the orchestra has arrived. No thin five-piece affair, but a whole pitful of oboes and trombones and saxophones and viols and cornets, which are trumpets, and piccolos, which are little flutes, and low and high drums. The last swimmers have come in from the beach now and are dressing upstairs. The cars from New York are parked 5 deep in the drive, and already the halls and salons and verandas are gaudy with primary colors, and hair shorn or cut in strange new ways, and shawls, or the things that women wrap around their shoulders, and shawls beyond the dreams of Castile. Again, another reference to France. The bar is in full swing, and floating rounds of cocktails permeate the garden outside until the air is alive with chatter and laughter and casual innuendo and introductions forgotten on the spot and enthusiastic meetings between women who never knew each other's names. So this sentence right here where it starts with the bar is in full swing, he's basically saying floating rounds of cocktails. So there's butlers walking around with trays, and there's so many of them, they're permeating the garden, they're everywhere. Okay, so this is really good imagery. And everything is chatter, laughter, and it says casual innuendo, introductions, forgotten on the spot, and enthusiastic meetings. Okay, between women who never knew each other's names. This is showing that all the people at Gatsby's parties, they don't know each other, right? They're not like there with friends. And the relationships are very fake, right? You're introduced to someone and then you're going to forget their name pretty much almost instantly. The lights grow brighter as the earth lurches away from the sun, aka it gets darker. And now the orchestra is playing yellow cocktail music. There's your color motif again. And the opera of voices pitches a key higher. Laughter is easier minute by minute, spilled with prodigality. And that's a diction word you should look up. Tipped out at a cheerful word. The groups change more swiftly, swell with new arrivals, dissolve and form in the same breath, right? So people just come and go, and it says there are wanderers, confident girls who weave here and there among the stouter and more stable, become for a sharp joyous moment the center of a group, and then, excited with triumph, glide on through the sea change of faces and voices and color under the constantly changing light. Light is another motif here. Suddenly, one of these gypsies in trembling opal is another color, okay, seizes a cocktail out of the air, dumps it down for courage, and moving her hands like Frisco dances out alone on the canvas platform, the stage. A momentary hush. The orchestra leader varies his rhythm obligingly for her, and there is a burst of chatter as the erroneous news goes around that she is Gilda Gray's understudy from The Follies. The Follies would be a play. Okay, it says the party has begun. Second paragraph, on page 41. I believe that on the first night I went to Gatsby's house, I was one of the few guests who had actually been invited. People were not invited. They went there. That's important to know, okay? Nobody was actually invited. People just show up. That's how random of a party it is. They got into automobiles, which bore them out to Long Island, and somehow they ended up at Gatsby's door. Once there, they were introduced by somebody who knew Gatsby, and after that, they conducted themselves according to the rules of behavior associated with an amusement park. So I would underline that part. After they were there, they conducted or behaved according to the rules of behavior associated with an amusement park. You're not annotate on the side. They're rude. They're drunks. They're crazy. Okay? Think about if you're having a party in your house. Would you want people behaving that way and trashing everything? Okay, so that's showing how people behave when they're there at Gatsby's. Sometimes they came and went without having met Gatsby at all. Came for the party with a simplicity of heart that was his own ticket of admission. I had actually been invited. A chauffeur in a uniform of robin's egg blue, there's another color, crossed my lawn early that Saturday morning with a surprisingly formal note from his employer. The honor would be entirely Gatsby's, it said, if I would attend his, quote, little party that night. He had seen me several times and had intended to call on me long before, but a particular combination of circumstances had prevented it. Signed, J. Gatsby, in majestic hand. So dressed up in white flannels, okay, so not pajamas. He's in like a suit, a white suit. I went over to his lawn a little after 7 and wandered around rather ill at ease among the swirls and eddies of people I didn't know. Top of page 42. Though here and there was a face I had noticed on the commuting train, right? I had noticed those people when I took the train into work. I was immediately struck by the number of young Englishmen dotted about. Okay, people from England, all well-dressed, all looking a little hungry, and all talking in low, earnest voices to solid and prosperous Americans. Prosperous, again, means wealthy. Sorry, I feel like I'm very blacklit by the sunlight in here. Again, paragraph on the top of page 42. Sorry. Okay. I was sure that they were selling something, bonds or insurance or automobiles. They were at least agonizingly aware of the easy money in the vicinity and convinced that it was theirs for a few words in the right key. So I would underline all that part. That's showing that there's a lot of wealthy people around here and easy money because they're all drunk, okay? English guys from another country. As soon as I arrived, I made an attempt to find my host, but the 2 or 3 people of whom I asked his whereabouts stared at me in such an amazed way and denied so vehemently any knowledge of his movements that I slunk off in the direction of the cocktail table, the only place in the garden where a single man could linger without looking purposeless and alone, right? He's like, embarrassed. Okay, whatever. I'm just going to get drunk. Well, maybe not drunk, but I'm going to go sidle up to the bar. Here's what he says. Actually, I'm wrong. I was on my way to get roaring drunk from sheer embarrassment when Jordan Baker came out of the house and stood at the head of the marble steps, leaning a little backward and looking with contemptuous interest down into the garden. Welcome or not, I found it necessary to attach myself to someone before I should begin to address cordial remarks to passers-by. Hello, I roared, advancing toward her. My voice seemed unnaturally loud across the garden. I thought you might be here, she responded absently as I came up. I remembered you lived next door, too. She held my hand impersonally as a promise that she'd take care of me in a minute and gave ear to 2 girls in twin yellow dresses, there's that color again, who stopped at the foot of the steps. Hello, they cried together. Sorry you didn't win. That was for the golf tournament. She had lost in the finals the week before. You don't know who we are, said one of the girls in yellow, but we met you here about a month ago. Oh, you've dyed your hair since then, remarked Jordan. And I started, but the girls had moved casually on, and her remark was addressed to the premature moon. Okay, so again, people say stupid things and then they float on towards somewhere else, something better. With Jordan's slender golden arm resting in mine, we descended the steps and sauntered about the garden. A tray of cocktails floated at us through the twilight, and we sat down at a table with the 2 girls in yellow and 3 men, each one introduced to us as a Mr. Mumble. Okay, and he's saying that because, when they're introduced, you can't even hear their names, right? Everything is very impersonal. Do you come to these parties often? Inquired Jordan of the girl beside her. The last one was the one I met you at, answered the girl in an alert, confident voice. She turned to her companion. Wasn't it for you, Lucille? It was for Lucille, too. I like to come, Lucille said. I never care what I do, so I always have a good time. There's that I don't care attitude. Now this is important. When I was here last, I tore my gown on a chair, and he asked me for my name and address. Inside of a week, I got a package from Courier's, which is like a department store, with a new evening gown in it. Did you keep it? Asked Jordan. Sure I did. I was going to wear it tonight, but it was too big in the bust, and it had to be altered. It was gas blue with lavender beads, color motif. $265. There's something funny about a fellow that'll do a thing like that, said the other girl eagerly. He doesn't want any trouble with anybody. Who doesn't? I inquired. Top of page 44. Gatsby. Somebody told me. The 2 girls and Jordan leaned together confidentially. Somebody told me they thought he killed a man once. A thrill passed over us. The 3 Mr. Mumbles bent forward and listened eagerly. I don't think it's so much that, argued Lucille skeptically. It's more that he was a German spy during the war. One of the men nodded in confirmation. I heard that from a man who knew all about him, grew up with him in Germany. He assured us positively. Oh no, said the first girl. It couldn't be that because he was in the American Army during the war. As our credulity is your believability, switched back to her, she leaned forward with enthusiasm. You look at him sometimes when he thinks nobody's looking at him. I bet he killed a man. She narrowed her eyes and shivered. Lucille shivered. We all turned and looked around for Gatsby. It was testimony to the romantic speculation he inspired that there were whispers about him from those who had found little that it was necessary to whisper about in this world. Okay, so a whole bunch of stuff just happened here. First of all, we find out that this chick Lucille came to the party, tore her dress, and Gatsby sends her a brand new dress, $265, okay? Back in the day, that's probably a lot of money. And it's kind of like you go to a party and you're drunk and let's say you ruin your really expensive Nikes or whatever, okay? And then the next day, the person who hosted the party sends you a brand new pair. Now, it's not his fault that the crap happened at your house, right? So when you get these new shoes, you would probably be like, what the heck? Okay, so I want you to think about, what does this say about Gatsby? If that he tries really hard to please people, perhaps. And you can also think about the fact that, what has he done? This other lady says, on the bottom of page 43, right? He doesn't want any trouble with anybody. So to me, that creates a huge air of mystery about Gatsby. Okay, nobody knows what the truth is. So we've talked about that he thought he killed a man, that he was a German spy, that he grew up in Germany, or that he was an American, that he was in the American Army during the war. Okay, and she says, you look at him sometimes when he thinks nobody's looking at him. I bet he killed a man. So there's all this mystery surrounding Gatsby. And with that, we will take a break and be back in a second.